You know, this is a space that's built by community. This is a beautiful building that it took us years to build, and we were able to do it because of an incredible community of supporters, our board, our staff, so many donors, many of whom are in this room. And when I think of community in ways that folks have supported, I certainly think of the brilliant, iconic, stunning woman to my right, Carrie Mae Weems. Khary was honored by Brotherhood Sister Soul at our gala some years ago. Came to meet our young people even before we honored her. After the gala, we decided she would be our inaugural artist in residence and do a series of talks and work with our young people. And something called COVID had another idea, and the world shut down. And it would have been so easy for Khary at that point to say, so this artist in residency thing, I don't think it's really going to work out. And instead, she got on Zoom and worked with our alumni, the Peace Poets, to create a PSA and messaging about COVID and the inequality of COVID. And some of the signs are here in the room if you didn't see them, in English and Spanish, and the way that COVID struck low-income communities in a much more deadly way at the beginning of the pandemic than in other communities. And the PSA and the images wrapped the steps of the Brooklyn Museum and other spaces. And Khary engaged with our young people and did a workshop last summer where she taught young people about centering themselves in art and in images, and some of those images are floating around as well. And I just say it because Khary in so many ways has been a supporter of ours. And she is one of the most influential contemporary artists in our world. She has investigated family relationships and cultural identity, sexism, class, political systems, and the consequence of power. She's often chosen to center herself in images, to center women in images specifically, to reclaim space, a theme that I look forward to talking to her about this evening. She has developed a complex body of art employing photographs, text, fabric, audio, digital images, installation, and video. And in a recent New York Times review of one of her retrospectives, the Times wrote, "Miss Weems is what she has always been, a superb image maker and a moral force, focused and irrepressible." And that word certainly is Carrie Mae Weems. So welcome, Khary.
Oh my, thank you.
So this evening, the focus, the theme is about art and activism. We'll be passing the mic back and forth. Khary will be doing the vast majority of the talking. And as I thought about some questions this evening, I actually kept returning to Khary's own words. And you all also have some time to ask questions yourselves. So in a certain way, Khary's almost interviewing herself, because I'm going to center her words in my questions. When we talk about art and activism, it's a central theme of the work of Brotherhood Sister Soul, the powerful, illuminating work that is art and activism, where young people find their voice, comment on the world, are empowered through that process, and go through personal transformation. And so Khary once said, "It is a claiming of space. It is really understanding the uniqueness of voice and what we have to offer. Our right to be in that space and to change it by our very presence." And so I've started to think about resistance as an act of love. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to that, about how you claim space, and as a Black woman, as an artist, how resistance is love.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here, to be with you, Khary, and to be a part of this amazing organization. And I don't exactly remember how it started. I don't remember exactly how long ago. I mean, 10 years, 12 years, something like this. I've been, right? You know, just sort of suddenly I received this phone call or a letter and asking me about BroSis and Arlene. It was like, what? Who? Okay. I came down and I met you, Jason, wonderful staff, some of the students. And gradually fell in love. was, still am enamored by the compassion, by the desire, the will, the might, the courage to be in space. And so one of the things that you did, for instance, you and Jason together in building this organization, was to claim a certain space. To claim that space, to be in that space, and then to transform the space, knowing that what you had to do for the community in which you were situated, understanding the need and the extraordinary need, but also the incredible pleasure and the incredible joy of giving, of being an active member of the place in which you live, and allowing young people and older people as well to grow and to prosper and to see themselves differently in relationship to the world and how they've been expected, as opposed to how they've been expected to be in the world and treated in the world. That is an act of love. And so I think in a lot of ways, I think that we are echoes and reflections of one another. So the work that I have been involved in from the very beginning of my career, was to first and foremost to understand what was going on in the arts, what was taking place in the arts, who was I hearing from, what was I learning about, what was I seeing for the most part in institutions and books and publications, and what I thought needed to be there as well. That I am a huge fan of art in general, but I knew that there was something that was strategically left out, considered and left out, disregarded, devalued, etc. And so from the very beginning, I spent the first few years really looking at what women were doing in the arts. What were women doing in the arts? Who were the women? So I started an organization called Women in Photography and worked with a whole group of women, slowly but surely, in Los Angeles and California, looking at this work, trying to gather people together, and then striking out on my own and building archives, sending out hundreds of letters with my little, writing these letters and putting my little 7-cent stamp on the corner and sending them out saying, who are the women that you know? And can you pass this flyer to someone that you know who is a photographer, and have them send me their images, 20 images, 20 slides. So I started building my own archive. I built my own archive of women artists, and then I started actually curating exhibitions of women artists. Then I did the same thing with African American photographers. Who were the African American photographers? Where were they? What were they doing? What was that work like, right? And it was through that investigation that I met the extraordinary Roy DeCarava, the Kamoinge Workshop, groups now and individuals, Sean Walker, Beeford Smith, Ming Smith, who are just now beginning to be recognized and their work acquired by collectors and museums. That's just happening now. I interviewed artists across the country, desperately getting little grants together, and jumping on Greyhound and Amtrak and going to all these little towns to meet artists. And one of them was the wonderful photographer P.H. Polk, who lived in Alabama, who was the photographer. He did a lot of the photographs of George Washington Carver at Tuskegee. Nobody knew him. So I went to visit him. In Alabama. And he took me up to his studio, his photo studio, which is at the top of his house, an old attic at the top of his house. And there were hundreds of photographs hundreds, piles and piles of photographs and hundreds of negatives, right? Thousands of negatives from all of this, the years of work that this man did. And I was just overwhelmed, right? I was overwhelmed. It was like 150 degrees there, right? This is where this man is working. He's like, 75 years old at this point, printing out photographs. And so I decided that I should at least buy a couple. And I said, Mr. Pope, I'd like to buy a couple of your photographs. How much are they? And he said, well, Carrie, I'll sell you one for 13 or two for 25.
Yeah.
And it broke my heart. And it broke my heart, right? One for 13 or two for 25. And so I met many people like that under extraordinary circumstances, people doing remarkable work, and knowing that that work needed to be shown, that it needed to be moved into the public sphere in a dynamic way. And so every chance I got, with every institution that approached me, I talked about the work of women and African American photographers, not necessarily my own work, with their work, because I thought that it really needed to be known and understood. And so, and it is the deepest joy, profoundly gratifying, and yes, an act of love. It is the thing that I care most about. How do we support the people and the projects, the disciplines that really matter, and how do you therefore change the field by what you bring to the field? And so I entered this space of art saying that I wanted to change the field.
Okay.
And that has been the core and the force of the work and the greatest motivation.
And you have changed the field, so you've been successful. So, drink as I form this question. Give you a drink moment. We're having a conversation about love and the resilience of love and the power of love. Obviously, that is in the face of so much inequity, so much inequality, so much injustice. So, the Brotherhood Sister Soul works at the intersection of educating, organizing, and training the field. We do that work to hold and support young people, to feed them the wonderful food you are eating tonight is what our young people eat every day in this beautiful space, due to inequity, due to the fact that 10% of our public school students are homeless, 10% of the million children in our schools, due to the fact that 20% of people on this island survive on under $10,000 a year, the island of Manhattan. We are so wraparound and comprehensive and supportive because of the inequity that our young people have to face each and every day. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways we talk about our work is as a formed community, a space that's based on the concept of love and of resilience. And we believe in surrounding young people with support and guidance and love and education and transformational services because we know the power that is. And there's a poet, Trethewey, who frames art in response to, quote, the mutilated world. And that phrase has always stuck with me because while we create beauty, in so many ways it's such a mutilated world. And so you said again once that your father would say to you, remember you have a right. My earliest memories are of that. And that's given me a sense of confidence, that I feel comfortable in the world, wherever I am. I love knowing about other cultures, but our quest to be human is what interests me. I think we are still crawling towards our humanity. We haven't arrived yet, but we are crawling towards our humanity. And so I think we can all see the inhumanity of our world, the inhumanity of our city, the inhumanity of our country, the inhumanity around the world right now. And so what does it mean to seek humanity, to seek the humane in art, when there is so much inhumanity, when it is such a mutilated world? How does one create art in the face of that.
I think we create it out of necessity. We create it because we have to, right? Because the deepest drive is hope, the ability to dream, the ability to stretch, to interrogate. And so, last night I went to this extraordinary concert. It was Toshi Regan. Every year celebrates her birthday, and she does it at Joe's Pub. And she invites her community of artists to participate. All of the artists selects one song that Toshi has written, and she never knows what they're going to sing, but they've made their selection, and then they simply deliver it to her. It was extraordinary, which is one of the reasons that I was up until 2 o'clock this morning. I had to pay the price for that. There were two things. One, going back to the idea of community. Community is built, and it's built over time, and it's built, if you're lucky, it's built to be sustained over time. And so year after year after year after year after year, many of the same artists are coming forward because those are her friends, her colleagues, the people that she knows and the people that know her best. Toshi's music, one of the things that was remarkable last night about being in that space was hearing 10, 12 different performers sing her music from across her life, and all of it different, all of it different, all of it different, and all of it the same. Yeah. Right? That essentially at its core, the thing that she's trying to unlock is notions of love, of freedom, of progress, of change. So that a part of being there, listening to this music, and really understanding her own progression, was also looking at me. I again felt as though I was looking at a mirror, right? That the issues of the core of the work has been the same again from the very beginning, right? How do I deal with and bring forth extraordinary beauty even through the despair, even through the discomfort, even through the disadvantage, even though I've not been recognized historically as an artist, right? Even, right? With all of the forces against you, how do you still press forth, with your ideas about what is really important? And the thing that is most important to me is how we address one another, how we deal with one another, how we embrace one another, how we accept one another. I had a wonderful conversation with my mother about grace one morning. I called her up. I was working on a project called Grace Notes, my first play. Really interesting, wonderful musicians, text, dancing, poetry, literature. But I was dealing with this thing about grace. What is grace? I'd written it. It was my title, right? Right? What is grace? And so finally, I decided that I would do a series of interviews, asking a group of people, from my pastor on, what was the meaning of grace to them? Mm. But it was my mother who was really the person that came through, right? And she said, we're really talking about compassion, our ability to be compassionate, even in the face of all of the resistance that is coming at you. Mm. Right? That even in the face of those who would rather see you dead, that you still see the core and the depth of their humanity, and you offer it back to them. Right? That you don't devalue self in the process of inhumanity, that you step even further into your humanity with the hope that it would be received and understood and reflected back on the looker. And so the work that I'm trying to make is often curved around this, I think, very simple idea, which is I understand my humanity and I understand yours. And so here is a space of witnessing and here is a space of interrogation that we can enter in together in a complex way that offers us both an out. Yeah?
Absolutely.
So it's, so it's really crazy stuff, right? I mean, like I cry a lot. I cry a lot. I was working on this project, Grace Notes, again. And Donald Trump was just emerging. This was like, 2014, right? That. And I'm and all of these young black men had been killed. I'm having a deja vu moment at this very second. It's crazy. All these young black men had been murdered. And then the Emmanuel Nine, right? The Emmanuel Nine were killed in their extraordinary church, welcoming in this young boy, right? An armed man who comes in and kills them all. And, and so I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this project, how to deal with this moment, how to describe this moment in a way that isn't preaching to the choir, that is, that while there is an extraordinary amount of anger, there's also enrage. I knew that I couldn't be rageful because then it can't be heard, right? So how do you build this work, knowing what you know, feeling what you feel, but knowing that if you cross this line, that the work will not be received, that you'll just be another angry black woman. Mm-hmm. So one night I go to bed, autumn night, my husband is away. I do all these projects when my husband is fishing. I have a whole project called While You Were Fishing. I go to bed and I have this extraordinary dream. I dreamt that I was standing by the seashore and this enormous tsunami, this huge wave was coming. Right? It was terrifying. And I looked at this thing and I thought, oh my God, it's going to kill us all. And I started running. And just as I started running, I looked to my right and Donald Trump is leering at me. And I thought, well, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing in my dream?
And how do I get you out?
Right? So I run past Trump, and I'm running towards my friends and my family, warning them that this tsunami is coming and that we have to get to higher ground. And I get to this space, to a ladder, to Martin Puryear's great ladder. I don't know if any of you know Martin Puryear, but Martin Puryear, one of our great artists, has built one of the most extraordinary ladders of all time. It was at MoMA a few years ago. It just goes on forever, right? And all of my friends and family were climbing the ladder. And as they sang, they were singing, "We are climbing Jacob's ladder," not as a hymn, but as a protest song. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are, right? Just, right? I wake up from this dream and I knew what my work was. And I knew how to get out of the despair. By going and moving to higher ground. And so all of that material became actually the ground and the base for developing Grace Notes, right? By being in community, by being involved, by having conversation, by being in dialogue, including with my mother, right? By allowing myself to be vulnerable, but to pay attention and to be mindful of what was going on in the world around us. What is this coming of Trumpism? What is this coming of sort of the alt-right? How do we deal with this in a way that establishes a resistance to those negative forces that threaten to undermine democracy completely, right? You know, for fear of the browning, really, of America. And so how do you bring those sort of complex ideas into play in a way that can be heard and can be meaningful and useful not only to myself, but to a large audience of people? So it's been an interesting way of working, of being mindful and paying attention and building community.
Yep.
Building community so that there's a place to take some of this angst, some of this anxiety, and to use it in a way that really allows me to blossom out of it and to not be destroyed by it, because it's easily overwhelming.
That's right.
It's kind of dangerous stuff. You know, we're like really dealing with, you know, dangerous material.
Absolutely.
And you know, now we find ourselves in this sort of incredible moment of devastating war, whether we're talking about what's going on in Ukraine or what's going on in Palestine, the sort of conflict between Israel and Palestine. And people are afraid to speak. Nobody knows exactly what to say. I'm not a politician, I'm an artist. I think about politics a lot. I think about the social a great deal. I think about the meaning of the political in our lives and how it impresses itself on our lives. But I'm not a politician. I am an artist. And so recently I did a project around anti-Semitism for a group. We did a series of billboards on the West Coast. And then there was this horrible attack in October in Israel, and this amazing war has unleashed itself. And I thought, well, if there was a time actually for artists to speak, maybe this was also a time to speak. Maybe this was time to sort of enunciate something, to take a stand in relationship to something. I'm not exactly sure what that stand was, but I thought I should at least have a conversation with my colleagues. The same people that I've just finished doing this anti-Semitic project with. Maybe we would look at what this would mean. And it was the first time that I've ever actually sent out a notice and no one responded. Absolutely no one responded. And a lot of that is because nobody knows what to say. People are in this sort of in-between place where they're afraid to speak out. People are afraid to really sort of, you know, share their political views. And so we're in this sort of moment, you know, around this issue and a number of other issues where there's a great deal of sort of pressure put on artists to be present, but to not necessarily speak their minds. So any number of exhibitions have been closed. Any number of exhibitions have been canceled by artists who really sort of sided with the Palestinians. So it's a really complex moment, actually, to be an artist and to take a social stand and a position.
You know, think of Baldwin, always Baldwin, who said that hatred always destroys the one who hates. That is the natural law, right? And so how do you deal with hatred in a moment where people feel even empowered by their hatred, when we're thinking of this election that we're in the midst of, this time that we're in the midst of in this country? When I think of silence, you're talking a lot about the silencing of artists. You know, there's a credible essay called In Search of Our Mother's Gardens by Alice Walker.
Oh, fabulous
where
essay.
She talks about what would it mean to be an artist, to be a black woman,
and our grandmother's
not be able to sing, to not be able to play, to not be able to emote, to not be able to take photographs, to not be able to paint. And she says it's a question with an answer cruel enough to stop the blood.
Yes.
And what does it mean to not be able to speak out as an artist and not to be able to engage in conversation and in dialogue? And so I think it's the power of art. I mean, one of the things you and I have talked about before is really the intersection of art and activism, of transformational power of art. That so often art is seen as an addition of something that's simply beauty as opposed to central.
I wish.
And right, essential not only to the artist but to the person who experiences it, that all people deserve it. So when so many people talk about the beauty of this building and the space that we're in, what I say is our young people deserve a beautiful space just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Our young people should be inspired just like everybody else. They deserve that. And I always reflect on, the famous Bread and Roses march that was of all immigrant women in Massachusetts that brought about a lot of union protections over 100 years ago. And the theme of the march was bread and roses, that working class and poor people deserve sustenance for their bodies and for their souls. That they deserve it, that it's theirs. It's not just the province of the wealthy. Also, as you were talking, I heard my father's voice in my ear, who is, anyone who knows him, is a serious optimist and always believes that, we'll be able to transform the world, and it's driven his life. And as low as I've ever seen him was after Trump was elected. And he was despondent for several days. And then, a man who grew up in segregation, lived in segregation for 25 years, every aspect of his life controlled by American apartheid. He got up and in his clear, direct way said, "We've beaten a lot worse motherfuckers than this one. We'll get him too." And, I think that
Isn't it amazing? I love this answer.
That vision is critically important because we have to be clear-eyed about what it is that we are up against. All of the inhumanity, all of the brokenness, all of the mutilated world. I mean, I know so many people who each morning are terrified to read the news, who are despondent each day. You're not the only one crying all the time, right? So many of us feel that way. What do we do in spite of that? And so again, as an organization, our responsibility is to educate young people to understand all that we're talking about, so they understand what it is that they're facing. Also that they are unafraid to have the complex and difficult conversations. That is where solutions are, that is where our future is, that these are the conversations that will lead towards a better world. And then number 3, what you've touched on, that they must have hope. Because it's so easy to look at our world right now and want to turn off, our computers or throw our hands up in the air and say there's nothing we can do. But if you have hope, it might be realistic, it might sometimes be somber, but hope, that's the only thing that allows us to create art, yes, and to transform the world. And so the fact that you touch on those points, I just think it's so intertwined with kind of what our worldview is as an organization. And I just appreciate that. I wanted to bring one more quote of yours in, and we're going to also bring some voices from you all here.
But I get so excited.
Go ahead. You got to take the mic.
I mean, I just get so excited. I'm excited by what I see around me. I'm excited by the challenge. I'm excited by this time. I mean, yeah, it's tough, right? It's a tough time, but it's also a fascinating time. We are in the midst of a great transition in this country, and there is no doubt about it, right? And a part of what is happening, we are sort of like in the growing pains of being who we're going to be as a nation. We are really shedding some old skin that's been holding on to us for a very long time. All of us are in it. And so I think of this as being sort of an amazing time. It's complex, it's difficult, it's a battle, right? It's a fight, and I want to be in it, right? I want to be in it. I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of that solution, or at least, a really great problem to solve, right? I want to be a problem to solve that I need to be unpacked, that I need to interrogate me, right? With all of my sort of sense of, of being a good person, I am really messed up in a whole bunch of ways that are deadly and dangerous and evil and mean-spirited, right? And I have to deal with who I really really am as a person, right? And so we all do, right? In one way or another, you got your stuff, I got mine, you know? And so, but it is, I think, exciting and wonderful and dynamic, and to be a part of it, to be a part of the change, to be a part of what is happening in the world, I think is really sort of amazing. And to see all of these sort of, these things just sort of bubbling up, new artists emerging, new work emerging, new literatures emerging, new playwrights emerging, new musicians emerging, right? Women stepping out in a way that they've never stepped out before in the past, being recognized. For instance, on the Grammys that are coming up, it's all women for the most part who are being really celebrated because they've been so not just neglected, but because they're so extraordinary as artists, right? 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I could list rather all of the African American artists in New York. I knew them all. Not today, right? Hundreds of people, young people, are coming out of institutions, out of universities, Yale, Harvard, Brown, Syracuse, exhibitions all over the country, all over the city, in a way that is unprecedented, right? All of it a part of coming out of trauma, coming out of coming out of the death of George Floyd, right? But all of it, around a kind of corrective, that something else new needs to happen and that we need to deal with ourselves and who we are as a nation in a new way. And artists have a tremendous role, I think, to play in it, and they are.
Thank you, Khary. She answers the question before I ask the question. I wanted to bring you all in. I mean, part of this evening is about an opportunity to be in a very intimate space. You're here because you're a dear supporter of the organization, or somebody vouched for you, one of the two. And we believe in having these conversations because we believe in struggling with the difficult and complicated. I was talking to some folks earlier and saying that we're unapologetic about all of the day-to-day work we do to feed children, to hold children, to support and guide and love children, and at the same time to tackle the macro conditions that our young people face, the inequity, the inequality. The only way you can do that as an organization is if you keep your eye on the complexity that we face, the multi-layered, multi-generation historic realities that we face because of race, because of gender, because of class. And so an evening like tonight is an evening where we want to investigate what has inspired Khary as an artist. Obviously her images, or some of them, or many, are moving behind me. And just such a brilliant artist who has created work that has inspired so many. I was fortunate to be invited by Khary to be at a convening at Brown in November, and to read and present there with a group of incredible artists and activists that everyone, one after the other, said only Carrie Mae Weems could have convened 3 days at Brown, her space, her voice, her vision, artists of so many types and kinds. And so just want to thank you for that, for all of that you do.
Thank you for coming.
Of course, it was great. Anytime you invite me. But I wanted to see if there were any folks here this evening who had something they really wanted to ask Khary about, or a question, or yes. And if you can project, you think? Yeah, you don't need it. It's a school teacher. He knows how to do that.
I can project a little bit. I want to thank you, first of all, for sharing your vision of your work and our society. It's very inspiring. So I've listened to a couple, you let us in on a couple of sort of light bulb moments that sparked a work. Your husband going fishing, everything. What I'm curious about is, when was that light bulb moment in your life when you said, I'm an artist, and this is what I'm going to do?
Oh, when I was about 8. When I was about 8 years old. I was like an existentialist at 8. I mean, I knew that I was kind of weird. I loved being by myself and painting and drawing and thinking about, weird things. So, but I was very young, and I was lucky that I had a family, a mother, a father that really sort of encouraged me. But it happened early in my life. My mother still thinks I'm a little odd.
It's much better to be odd than regular, I would say. And again, I think it's, we had some of the young people who did this photography exhibit. So the photos in here come from an exhibit that Carrie did with our young people over the summer, and having them tell the story of Harlem through their eyes. And so you see a lot of these images. And when Carrie came earlier into the building and was walking around, several of the artists, the young people, were here. And one of them was unbelievably shy. She's turning away now in the back, I won't name her, and was so excited to meet Carrie. But what I remember so clearly is when we had the exhibition to open their art just a couple months ago, she was here with her mother, and her mother was so proud to see the art that her daughter had created and the exhibit we were holding of that art. So,
and we're going to do it again this summer.
Yes, we will.
Which I think is really kind of wonderful.
Frank López, our alum, who managed the project with Carrie. Yes, Pamela.
Actually, that was part of my question. Like, what was it like working with kids here last summer, and then when you did the project during COVID?
Well, during COVID, it was really it was so intense. But we had a really great time. I mean, we were just Zooming constantly, and I think we really needed one another. Like I needed them as much as they needed me, and I think, they saved me from myself. They saved me from my worst instincts. Right? That they were, a group of young people that we could get together on a regular basis and really talk about what was happening, what they were feeling, what they were seeing, what they were seeing specifically here in Harlem, right? And then how we might generate work around that. Not only did we present work here in Harlem, we actually wound up going throughout the city. So I'm tenacious. Once something, right? But we figured out how to take the work to the Brooklyn Museum. We figured out how to take the work to parts of Philadelphia. We took some of the work to South Africa. We took some of the work to London. And so along with me, they got to experience something else. We also brought in a young woman from Colombia who I was also working with, who worked with us for a period of time, again, specifically around the COVID project, which I think was magical. The video projects that were made here by students I thought were just superb, and we used them as much as we possibly could in a number of different iterations through outdoor projection, etc. And so the work, I think, is very important. And sort of going back, just very quickly to this idea of what it means to really work with young people. The most important thing that young people are asking you for is a permission to be. A real permission to be and to be heard, and to really ask, do you really care about me, or do you just say you care about me? And a part of your sort of the sustainability piece is that, that you're there not just now, but that we will be there tomorrow, is saying that, yes, actually, even though I'm not really a huge fan of kids, I really do like you. I really do like you. I think you're actually an interesting person. Now, let's get some work done. And so that's how we sort of came, I think, through the process this year. It's like, I really, interesting. I've been reading a book by a very important journalist who did a lot of work in Harlem. And in reading her book, Charlene Hunter-Gault, in reading her beautiful essay on Harlem, it just started sparking these thoughts that, maybe I could work with the kids here and have them actually go to some of the sites that she actually names, and then have them start sort of describing for themselves, moving through the community of Harlem itself, documenting really what this community really looks like. And so this was our first summer. Last summer was our first summer. Hopefully we'll do it this year. We'll do it again, because it really sort of takes 3 years actually to get stuff really popping. You know, but I think that we've begun, and I'm very much looking forward to what we're able to do with really describing the complexity of Harlem. I think it's a fabulous project.
Thank you, Carrie. So we are reaching the end of our conversation. I know it went quick, but it's 7:53. And we want to have time for folks, if you're interested, to see the 2 pieces of work. Class Ponders the Future, which is on the 3rd floor, and Always Remember to Dream, which is on the 2nd floor. And Kathy and Helen are here. Somewhere, Kathy, wave her hand. And so when we break, if you'd like to go see those works, you can go with Kathy. Your other option, or both options, is on the 1st floor. We have some more drinks, more food, and more dessert, and Carrie will go down there for the kind of post-reception. And, you know, what I wanted to also just say to this room is that the kind of work you're hearing about tonight, the engagement with one of the great visual artists of our time that our young people have access to, the kind of conversation that we're having this evening, is a kind of conversation we have with young people. Trying to help young people understand the world and the complexity of the world and the difficulty of the world, and being honest with them when we don't have the answers, and trying to give them direction to find the answers themselves. And so we can't do that work without this circle of supporters. And so we just want to name how important your support is to the organization. We are always looking to raise funds. We're not asking you for money tonight. But what we are certainly asking is for you to continue to support our work, to think about what it means to invest in the young people of New York City in the way that so many of you have. This is an investment in the city of New York. Our art programming costs about $350,000 a year to provide direct arts programming to all of our young people. We run a very tight budget here, yet our annual budget is $11 million a year. That's a huge undertaking to raise each and every year from so many sources. At our gala, when we honor people like Carrie, this year our gala is May 9th. Save the date. It's the most inspirational gala you've been to. I guarantee you, nobody likes galas. Ours is different. Ask some people in the room. The food is also wonderful. It's family style. We bring our own chef. I know you think I'm joking, but I guarantee you it's true. We're honoring Ai-Jin Poo, who is the founder of Domestic Workers United. Time Magazine's 50 Most Powerful People in the World. Fortune Magazine, 50 Most Powerful in the World. It's being hosted by Hassan Minhaj, Peabody Award-winning, Emmy Award-winning journalist. It's a beautiful, powerful night that celebrates the voices of our young people, hence why it's called Voices. So we hope to see you on May 9th. If you're interested in supporting our arts programming, we'd love to have that conversation with you. And if you're already supporting, the reason I mentioned this $11 million number, you know, we are a staff of 52 serving thousands of young people. When people from the outside, philanthropic advisors and foundation people come and ask us what our budget is, they assume it's going to be 15, 16, 17. It's how tight we do run our budget. And the only way we can do that is with all of you. And so I say thank you again for your support. I ask if you can to do even more, because it's the only way we can get our work done. And so thank you for coming this evening. Thank you for hearing the, I don't know, I've run out of adjectives, and that's hard for me to run out of them, but the irrepressible, we'll go back to that word, profound, Carrie Mae Weems. It's always an honor being in conversation with you. It's always an honor partnering with you and talking with you. You know, there are those people who call you and you're excited when you see the number, and then the people call you and you send them to voicemail, and every time Carrie's number pops up, it makes me smile. So thank you for being here. Please go look at her work. Please join us downstairs and have some more phenomenal food by our executive chef, Rebecca. Have another drink, talk some more with Khary. And if you can just join me in thanking Carrie Mae Weems for the conversation.